During pregnancy, it can feel like all of your preferences and your visions sort of fade away into the background in the favor of medical advice, more convenient alternatives, and the well-meaning recommendations and advice of friends and family. And sometimes you're ready to give up your autonomy in one area in order to get closer to some preferred outcomes in another. But it can feel disempowering. Especially after birth, the parent's recovery can feel like it kind of becomes an afterthought as all of the attention and care shifts to the baby. Now, while it's right and good that the baby, who is 100% dependent on you for care, gets the help that they need, that doesn't mean that there's 0% left for you. I'm Patricia. I'm a postpartum doula and a sleep counselor, and I help new parents prepare for life with their babies. In this video, I want to encourage you to consider you and your family's must-haves and deal breakers, because knowing what you want and communicating it clearly can greatly enhance your sense of control, reduce stress, and lead to a more satisfying birth and postpartum experience. So let's explore how you can define and stand by your must-haves and deal breakers, and what those can even be during the early postpartum period. Let's start by looking at the importance of personal boundaries in childbirth and postpartum. Setting personal boundaries or clear preferences is crucial for maintaining your sense of self and control during childbirth and the postpartum period, because these are times of great vulnerability. In a lot of ways, and wisely so, as a pregnant person, we hand a lot of our power over to our medical team. Especially as first-time parents, we depend on our providers to orient us within our experience and to guide us to the best decisions and the healthiest outcomes. The non-negotiables I invite you to consider are the aspects of your birth and postpartum experience that you feel strongly about and are unwilling to compromise on, except in the case of a medical crisis. Here are some examples of common non-negotiables. Preferences for pain management during labor. Your choice of birth environment, for example, the home, hospital, or birth center. Your preference of specific support people like your partner, a doula, or other family members. Interventions you want or want to avoid, like induction, epidural, or episiotomy. And postpartum care practices like breastfeeding support or limited visitors. How to effectively communicate your needs and expectations. Well, communication with your healthcare team is key. Be clear and assertive about your non-negotiables, but also be open to their professional advice. A birth plan is a useful tool to outline your preferences, and it should spark several meaningful discussions with your provider. Open communication is crucial. Every opportunity to share your worries, preferences, and deal breakers should inspire trust in your care team. If that's not the case, make time for more communication to ensure that you feel safe and looked after during labor and in the weeks that follow. And while your birth plan might start out as a kind of wish list or a fixed guide for what you want, over time it should ideally turn into something more flexible. While it's important to have your preferences documented, your plan should also help you prepare for contingencies, because some situations may require adjustments for the health and safety of both you and your baby. Now, why do you need a postpartum plan? Well, just as important as a birth plan is a postpartum plan. This can serve as a roadmap for you and your partner, and even others who are looking after you, outlining predetermined boundaries and must-haves for the postpartum period. It can include strategies for fielding unwanted visitors, ensuring one parent gets to sleep through a feeding every night, or setting up support systems for emotional and physical recovery. While this can be drafted mostly for personal use, a postpartum plan can be shared with health providers if you want. And just like your birth plan, your postpartum plan might start out as the idealized version of you and your beautiful sleeping baby graciously receiving doting visitors, and eventually shift into something more clearly outlining the practicalities of day-to-day life with a newborn. Who will keep an eye on the laundry pile? How will you make sure each parent gets to eat at least one meal all the way through per day? And when will you call in reinforcements? Start putting your ideas on paper while you're still pregnant, so that this plan can grow and settle and become the guidebook or the mini manifesto for this upcoming postpartum experience. And if this is a process you'd like to work through together, just reach out. I'd love to help you solidify your vision and reach your goals. It's also really important to bring your partner in on this discussion. They can't help if they don't know what's important to you. And likewise, you can't support their preferences and vision for these early weeks with your baby if they haven't been able to share that with you. So take some time to prepare and share your expectations in a way that feels empowering and natural to you. This might mean taking time for individual reflection and drafting what matters to you, followed by setting aside time together to share your thoughts. For other couples, it might work best to tackle this collaboratively, with each person sharing, adjusting, offering feedback, and coming to mutually agreed upon boundaries. During birth and the postpartum period, there's often a real focus on the birthing person's wishes being respected, but it's important for partners to engage in this practice equally. Each of you is going through a similar transition into parenthood, and you should each be offered the space and permission to advocate for your own preferences, non-negotiables, and hopes for the birth and the immediate postpartum period. You'll also want to communicate your postpartum boundaries with family and visitors early and often. If you anticipate many visitors coming to see the baby, or certain visitors overstaying their welcome, and this is not what you want, make this clear to avoid stress and overwhelm. And please remember, you can change your mind. Maybe you thought you wanted space, but you find that you actually need the company and the happy visits more than expected. Or perhaps you initially wanted an open door policy to celebrate the arrival of your long-awaited baby, but with all the circumstances that changed, visits now feel stressful. You are allowed to change your mind and adjust your boundaries as needed. Here's my lesson in shifting boundaries. When my husband and I were in the final weeks of my pregnancy with our first baby, we didn't know what to expect. But we were determined to manage everything as a team and tackle everything together. The way this played out in the postpartum period is that as soon as I felt more or less okay after giving birth, I was back to cooking. We had to eat. Laundry. Well, he hadn't yet learned how to work the Japanese machines. And seeing him off to work. There was a bit of a crisis. And my mom was visiting. We were going to be fine. And so while I felt fine, I really didn't rest like maybe I should have. With my second baby, I was ready to see what it might be like to truly hand housework and chores off to someone else and actually rest for 2 weeks or more. So I communicated my intentions, I got everyone else's buy-in, and with their help, I successfully avoided micromanaging all the household things in the early postpartum period. I also felt fine after this second birth, but knowing that I was entirely off the hook for household tasks and nothing further would be asked of me was quite lovely. Knowing and asserting your non-negotiables during labor and the postpartum is really about reclaiming your autonomy and assuring that your birth and postpartum experience is as positive and empowering as possible. By setting clear boundaries, communicating effectively with your healthcare team, and involving your partner in the process, you can create a supportive environment that honors your preferences. Remember, this is your body, your birth, and your journey into parenthood, so make it your own. All right, next steps. This video draws heavily from one of my lessons in the Prepping for Parenthood course. So if you love this content, I encourage you to explore the course for more in-depth information and support. And of course, I want to hear from you. Your experiences and insights are super valuable, not only to me, but also to other new parents who may be watching this video. So comment down below, what are your must-haves and non-negotiables for labor and the postpartum period? And how did you communicate them? The previous video, the first video in this series, is all about the value of setting realistic expectations for the postpartum period. And the video that will follow this one is all about envisioning your perfect postpartum and how that can help you have a better postpartum experience. That's all for now. See you next time.